Namaskar and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, a show on India's national broadcaster, Doordarshan, about Indian foreign policy, India's international relations, and key developments and trends in different domains that have an impact on India's rise. Viewers, in this episode, we are taking a deep look at a phenomenon that is a game changer and is transforming every aspect of human life and existence, as well as world politics. This is artificial intelligence, or AI. So this is a buzzword and a catchphrase that everybody loves to talk about these days, but is not very well understood, especially the kind of impact it is having on the international order. So we're going to be focusing on developments in AI and the competition to be a leader in this field among major countries. And to discuss this, I have with me a domain expert who is at the World Economic Forum. She's a country specialist on data policy and artificial intelligence at the WEF, Ayushi Sarna. Ayushi Sarna has written and thinks about these cutting edge fields, and it's a privilege to have you here in the studio.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sreeram, for having me.
Ayushi, to start with, the proposition of the show is there is a race going on. Countries are competing for leadership and to accumulate strengths and capabilities in AI. So obviously, there is an understanding that this is a fundamental building block to be powerful in the world. And so everybody wants to be seen as leading the pack on this matter. But the question is, who are the real leaders in AI, strength, capabilities, competencies at present? And where does India stand, in this list? Because we have aspirations to be a leader in the field, but where are we vis-a-vis the others? And what are the parameters on the basis of which we are deciding who are, let's say, the top 5 countries in AI today?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. And I must tell you, this is a very opportune moment that we're having this discussion at, because the race, as you call it, is in full blow right now. And before we start understanding which country is where in terms of the ladder we are trying to look at, we first have to understand what are the various factors or what are the various criteria that would make or break a country in terms of it being a global superpower, and what are the top. So the first, I would say, is the first factor which determines that is definitely private funding and government funding into R&D and research. Then you have factors around data, access to data, the quality of the data, the legitimacy of the data in that country. Then you have compute. By compute, I mean the high processing GPUs, the graphical processing units on the basis of which these AI models are trained. So which country has access to massive infrastructure in terms of compute? And then also data centers, because that is where all the processing and the training happens. So which country is actually making these data center clusters? And then you have research on frontier models, all the bigger ones, the OpenAIs of the world, the Anthropics of the world, the Claudes of the world. They're creating these models because there is massive amount of public as well as private funding that is going into the development of these frontier AI models, like we like to call them. And then the next major bucket, which will determine whether a country does well in this area, is going to be use cases. Are we just talking about industrial automation? Are we just talking about benefiting the bigger corporations and their market cap? Or are we really talking about social values? Are we really looking at it from a more moral, ethical lens in terms of what can this technology do for the user at the ground?
The application of the technology.
The application aspect of it. How can we use this technology in agriculture, in health, in a standard SME, in a small village in your country? So all of these use cases are also going to ultimately determine whether a country is able to use this and demonstrate this technology at scale. Then you have other factors like talent, AI talent? Is your workforce good with this technology? Is your workforce educated in this technology? Then, of course, industry, whether industry is keenly adopting this technology. And then finally, a bigger one is strategy, national strategy. Is there a state strategy that is taking this technology forward at a national level? If there are states in a country and there are various fragmentations in AI policy in each state, that is not a good thing to have. If you have a cohesive national strategy, a cohesive global positioning, and then you have governance, AI governance, which tells you how these models are going to be developed. Who is going to be responsible if a model gives out false information? What is the traceability of the output of a model? Can you really audit why the model gives an output that it gives? So there are so many factors that ultimately determine whether a country is going to be able to do well in this area. Having said that, I'll come to the question of which country is really faring well here. I would say the first one, definitely, undoubtedly, unparalleled, will have to be the United States of America because of the massive amount of funding that is going in the private sector, in their research institutions, also the focus on creating data centers, but also in making sure a steady supply of chips that we have recently looked at the export controls that US has had. So this entire infrastructure that is being developed is really creating the basis or the foundational layers. So US would definitely be number one. But then there is also going to be China. You know, there is a wonderful tool that Stanford has, which is called the Global AI Vibrancy Index. And what it really accounts for is over a number of years how different countries have fared. And China has leapfrogged its way up in terms of global AI vibrancy, use readiness, whatever you want to call it.
In a very short duration of time.
In a very short duration of time. Look at the number of AI patents that are coming out of China. It's one of the highest in the world. And then you have the number of data center clusters. China has the largest number of data center clusters in the world. So there is also a lot of push or patronage from the Chinese government in terms of developing chips, in terms of the frontier AI model development. So China will definitely be the second one. In terms of what comes next, which country comes next, I would have said probably some country from Europe, maybe like a UK or a France, but I am still going to go ahead and say India. Because India does well on fronts that are very different from US and China. It does not have the infrastructure edge. It also does not have the edge around public and research funding that goes into it. But we do have an edge in terms of how we are positioning this technology as a global leader. We do have an edge in terms of the amount of data we have, thanks to the DPI stack, like the India stack, like we like to call it. We also have an edge in terms of the use case aspect of it, because we are really positioning this as a technology that affects our farmers and our people in terms of healthcare and education, etc. So these are the few areas where India can really do well. Of course, there is a lot to be wanted in terms of improving the compute that we have. We still do not have 100% reliance on a sovereign cloud. We have services from Yota and E2E where you're using their cloud services, but we're also greatly dependent on the Microsofts and the Amazons of the world today for their data center services and cloud services. So this is the reason why I put India at number 3. I think the next one will have to be, we can do this interchangeably, but either of course, keeping aside the tensions in the Middle East right now, but UAE did a lot in terms of having a very early AI ministry in terms, in as early as 2017, there is an AI university. There is the Falcon series AI models that they have invested in. So You could put UAE, but you could also put France, where you have the Mistral Foundation model that has come out of France, and you also have a lot of big bucks going into research and public funding.
And the South Koreans and the Japanese also?
South Koreans and Japanese as well. Maybe in the fifth spot, we are going to put UK or South Korea and Japan, because again, a lot of public funding around AI model development in UK, as well as South Korea and Japan, but also in the UK on achieving this responsible AI governance status that UK has.
Right. Viewers, what you are hearing from Ayushi Sarna is that funding, of course, and investment in research and development is a key, but there are many other factors, including governance, having a national strategy, and catching on to the trends early, and putting the right kind of people, and the coordination between the state and the private sector. All these are very, very crucial. And only countries that have got all of these well, and also the point about, I think, usage and application is very critical. In fact, going to that, Ayushi, most people, you already mentioned the social welfare and the developmental purposes for which a global South country like India proposes to apply AI. But there are also there's also industry and productivity and economic growth, which is supposed to be turbocharged because of the speed and of the efficiency of AI, right? I mean, that's supposed to be like the big prize that is awaiting all of us, and especially the ones that can adapt it. So in terms of economic growth, how much of the AI push can propel and, exponentially make a country grow economically? That's one thing people would like to know. And second, the other aspect is the military, dimension, defense and security. Also, it's quite clear that you can have an edge over your rivals in geopolitics if you've got AI enabled, and they are calling it intelligentization of warfare and all these things, right? So let's talk about how AI can really, really be a game changer for a country in terms of enhancing its economic growth and its military might.
Definitely. I think when we talk about economic growth, a big aspect of it is public service delivery and leakages that used to happen in the delivery of that public service. If we take a step back to when our DPI stack was created, DPI so far has enabled us to ensure that we avoid hundreds of billions of dollars in leakage or corruption that could have happened during public service delivery, because it helps you target what subsidy or what transfer needs to happen to which citizen. If you add the AI layer on top of it, you're looking at even more intelligence in terms of which transfer needs to happen to what citizen, what is the need, how to target the transfers better. So there is a lot of progress to be made in terms of how public service delivery happens and the associated leakages that could have happened. That's number one. But also industry. At the World Economic Forum, I also lead in a work stream on AI for SMEs. And when you talk about AI for SMEs, you're looking at AI in enterprises that make up more than half of our manufacturing export. Right.
Small and medium enterprises.
Small and medium enterprises is what SMEs would stand for. So you're looking at a massive, massive share of export of your GDP. And if you're able to integrate AI in these smaller enterprises, of course, we can also do that for the larger enterprises, but larger enterprises have the big bucks to do it by themselves. The smaller ones, if you can come up with use cases in different SME clusters that we have in India, in various industries, that is a massive, massive potential that can, transform business operations for these smaller guys as well. But also in terms of trade, logistics, supply chain optimization, there are many AI use cases that are coming up. So these are just a few core areas. Effective health delivery, effective agricultural policy. Our 76 million farmers now have a digital farmer ID under the AgriStack. Can you tell a farmer when to sow the crop, or sow the seed, when to harvest the crop, where to sell it, when to spray the pesticide in a manner which is mostly, timely optimized in order to prevent disease on the crop? There is so much that you can do at the grassroots, which is then going to benefit our economy. That is definitely on the economic front, but also in the military front. decision intelligence is a big one, right? The speed at which decision intelligence can be delivered and the accuracy as well, because we are removing all the human biases or human oversight. The speed at which it can be delivered is going to be really massive. We've already seen many nations started using AI in terms of their how to best manage their operations, defense operations. Our armed forces, even in the army today, we have around 18 working groups working on AI. So that is number one. But then you also have cyber warfare and how AI can affect cyber warfare. If you look at AI as a technology that can help you in cyber warfare, it is both on the offensive as well as the defensive side. It can really help you identify the vulnerabilities of an enemy, maybe attack their defense networks, communication networks, etc. But also on the defensive side, where are my vulnerabilities? And if there is an incoming threat, assessing it and predicting it and preventing it is also a big one. And then finally, in terms of military might, also in terms of AI in autonomous vehicles, unmanned vehicles, drones, and AI precision munitions, this is a lot of areas that a country definitely can use, to better standardize defense operations. Of course, there are a lot of concerns around the ethics of it and how...
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about killer robots and whether, they can cause more destruction and more death with no emotion whatsoever, those sort of things are out in the public.
Definitely. And then it is on a country to make sure that no matter the sector, especially a high-stake sector like defense, but no matter the sector, how responsible the AI adoption and AI use can be and how ethical we can be with it, I think we cannot have that conversation in isolation. It has to go on with the adoption conversation.
Absolutely. Ayushi, so far we spoke about AI and power structures and who's ahead, who's behind, and how it's being, how it can be a force multiplier. Now, there's another element to this, which you already alluded to, which is the regulation and the control and the policy discourse around it. And India has taken the lead. In 2025, together with France, we did a huge AI Action Summit. And in 2026, we have organized the AI Impact Summit, bringing stakeholders from private as well as public and non-governmental sectors. All of them converged here in India. And the idea was to develop shared norms and institutions about do's and don'ts, and also to try and, regulate and govern this new breakthrough technology in a better way. Now, can we also claim India having taken a lead in these kind of things, that this is also one way to be influential in the AI domain, not just through R&D and through actual scientific and technological development, but also by trying to shape the rules and the norms around this? Because we say in international relations that power can be relative to others, but power can also be through institutions. And through institutions, by becoming the rule maker, we can then be able to set the agenda and make sure that our interests and our preferences are reflected in the global arena. So your thoughts on these big summits that we have done and the norm shaping that is going on around this at the World Economic Forum? I'm sure you're all tracking these things very closely, and especially on India's role as a agenda setter or as a norm shaper in AI.
Definitely. Very good question, because it is still early days in terms of how we are looking at the governance of this technology at the global level. It is only in the last 2-3 years since we started talking about ChatGPT that the governance of these models and which country is going to have what standards and what are the global safety standards, etc., that this conversation has come on. Now, India is uniquely positioned because I believe it is trying to play a middle path or a middle way in two ways. The first is the US versus China. US, big tech, innovation friendly, not too bent on having a very regulatory regime. But on the other hand, you have China, more of a surveillance kind of usage for AI and how to, advance its industrial sector, defense systems, etc. So India lies somewhere in between. It's not too tech heavy as well in terms of just the hegemony of a larger corporation who is developing these models or developing the compute. But then you also are not that regulation heavy. You're allowing for innovation. And that is how you also kind of maneuver the space between US and Europe as well. Europe is really regulation heavy. So that is one aspect. But then there is also the global north versus global south aspect, right? Global north is, again, tech friendly, more interested in developing these frontier AI models, developing the data center capacity. But then you have the global south, who through history and till today, sadly, we are so concerned about exclusion of the masses. We're so concerned about whether this is a new technology that is going to persist even more inequalities in our societies. And India, by positioning itself as, so to say, the champion of the global south in terms of adopting this technology, is bridging that gap between the global north as the provider of the technology and the global south as the receiver or the adopter of the technology. We've worked so much in the Indo-Pacific. Look at the Indo-Pacific, more than 62% of the world's GDP, right? We now have DPI MOUs with so many countries in the Indo-Pacific. You start from Singapore, Laos, Thailand, you go all the way to Vietnam. So all of these countries, when we talk about DPI exchange, it would be a pity if we also do not collaborate with them on shaping AI rules and AI governance, AI standards.
And Ayushi, just a related point, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been saying that we must develop AI for whole of humanity. It should be inclusive and it should be available as a commons. Like, our view is that it should be commons, but at the same time, it's proprietary knowledge and, it's backed by copyright and trademarks and all these things, right? So through these summits, are we able to convince more private players to share technology with the global south or even richer countries as a whole, if not just their companies? You think we're going to develop this as commons, or will it remain a closely guarded national treasure or a secret that we are never going to give away to others?
Yeah, I think that is why governance in this area is tricky, because there is so much upside that that any country can have by developing this infrastructure. When it comes to AI as commons, I believe there is a part to be made open, like India made some parts of its DPI stack open, or open source code, etc. A part of the infrastructure can remain open, but then there is going to be a part of the infrastructure, specifically the compute part of it. Who has the chips? Who controls the chips? Who manufactures the chip? We have seen US coming up with a TSMC plant in Arizona. So there is a part of this technology which lies underneath it that really shaping governance can be difficult on. Again, with the summits, it's because it's early days, it's more around positioning. Can we position ourselves as a leader who's talking about it? Are we interested in positioning ourselves globally as being a responsible AI leader? These summits are more around positioning, and the governance talks will come later, I believe. Governance is also tricky in this area, because think of nuclear, think of aviation. The downside to not cooperating is huge. But here, not so much.
There'll be inequality, but not necessarily total destruction.
Yes, definitely. So governance here is tricky. But I'm sure India, by positioning itself as championing the global South cause, is making some progress in terms of positioning. If you look at the EU, this is not to say that the one who shapes the standards is not going to be a governance leader in this sector, because EU, by shaping the standards, also controls market access of $17 million to so many global companies. So the one who shapes the standards will be the leader in terms of shaping the global future of this technology. But India definitely has made some progress in terms of positioning.
On that count. It's heartening to know. Last but not least, Ayushi, tech diplomacy. We have some close partners with whom we often enter into AI co-development and joint research and joint technological advancement agreements. There is a global partnership on artificial intelligence, of which India is a core member. The US, EU, some Asian allies of the US, they're all part of it. We also have bilateral United States-India artificial intelligence agreement. With France, high-tech cooperation is increasingly focused on AI, and even the summits we have done together with France. So how beneficial are these, if not universal sharing, can we share among smaller groups of friends and benefit mutually? And how much of an emphasis should be placed on tech diplomacy?
Definitely. I think that is important because within blocks, like you mentioned, the US-India AI initiative, within blocks, if you can share the technology and the research, then you can benefit of what the other is doing well that probably might not be a focus. So India can really... Complementarities, exactly. That can be a part of tech diplomacy. Of course, there is a development diplomacy that India is playing, as we talked about. But in terms of tech, can we benefit off of the research and the AI model development and sharing it, how it is in the US in terms of research. But then also, what can the world learn from us in terms of use case deployment in AI? There are so many pilots in various sectors that are happening in India, across agri, across health, across education, that there are definitely complementarities to be exploited there.
Amazing. So, viewers, this conversation with Ayushi Sarna of the World Economic Forum has, for me, opened new vistas into thinking about AI, not just as a kind of a cutting edge new wave of technologies, but also as a phenomenon that can shape and reshape the world orders, and for which there is a race going on. Countries are all lining up to be seen as number one, number two, or number three. And India is there. It's up there in the top 5 for sure, as per most of the rankings. And India is doing better relative to its socioeconomic status as a developing country. So most of the other big players are higher income. So that shows that we have actually made this a priority and are focusing on it at the right time. And as Ayushi says, it will have a big multiplier effect on India's economic growth and on its military might as well. But we are also engaging in partnerships with other countries, and these are beneficial. And we are also trying to set the global agenda in terms of agreed do's and don'ts in this new technology, so that we are there at the table when the rules are made rather than simply at the receiving end. As to what happens to the broader global south, there was a digital divide we spoke about. Now there's a talk about an AI divide. So these will remain, inequalities will remain, unfortunately. But I think a strategically positioned country like India can play this bridge builder between global north and global south, as Ayushi Sarna was saying, so that we are able to transfer some of the know-how. We are already doing it in some of the areas and sharing our digital public infrastructure and AI prowess with fellow developing countries. And this will also be one way by which we establish our stakes as a leader in this field. Let me thank Ayushi Sarna for unpacking a complex subject for our viewers in a very simple way and a clear way. I thank you for your work and your research and for your championing of India as an emerging force in this field.
Lovely. Pleasure meeting you and pleasure having this discussion. Thank you, Sreeram.
So viewers, artificial intelligence, you may think of it as, an overarching concept that is changing everything in front of our eyes. That is true. But whenever change comes, countries adapt. And the sum of this discussion is that India is very much alert to the high stakes game of the AI race. And we are trying to stay ahead of the rest, and also at the same time create a kind of an inclusive global AI order where everybody, including the last person in the system of the world, also gets benefits out of it. So I think this combination of being competitive and at the same time inclusive stands India apart, and its tech diplomacy apart from others. So watch out for this space, because whatever we say about the current rankings and the positions may become outdated, because this is a fast transforming area. But end of the day, I think India is up to speed so far, and we would hope that it also bridges the gaps where it needs to fill going forward. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again next time. Until then, take care.